Hi everybody, I am back to talk about all the books that I read in January. I saw a post yesterday that said we're 6 months into 2018 and it's still January. And I have rarely identified with a post more. It was a really long month. You know, you went through it, you understand. So I wanted to talk about the books that I read this month because I thought that I didn't read too many, but it's a pretty fair number. Charlie, stop. So the first book that I read this month was Ramona Blue by Julie Murphy. I got the ARC back in April and I only just got around to reading it. And I'm sad that I did and that it was so cold when I was reading it because it really made me want to go swimming. I will be doing a longer review of this later. Sure. The second book that I read was Refugee by Alan Gratz, and I will also be making another review of that one in a separate video, so I'm not going to talk too much about it now. Just know that there was some ugly crying, so get ready for that. I finally finished a book that I've talked about in several videos, 1,000 Beginnings and Endings, which is that collection of short stories of different Asian myths and legends retold by modern YA authors, and was so good. There, as in all short story collections, there were stories that I liked better than others, but there weren't any that I was like, meh, you know? And I, as a rule, don't really enjoy short stories because I want the story to keep going longer. And that was the case here too, but it was really nice to kind of have just like a little kind of one shot. I learned a lot about different stories that I hadn't heard and made me want to do more research and read more mythology and legends from various Asian cultures, which was really cool. I read The Screaming Staircase, which is the very first book in the Lockwood and Company, or Lockwood and Co. books by Jonathan Stroud. These are books that my coworker Kat read, and she and her daughter really love them, and she often recommends them to patrons who come into the library looking for a good kind of spooky, supernatural kind of fantasy book. And I finally, like, after having heard her recommend it for the upteenth time, said, okay, I'm gonna read it. I tried to read his other books, The Amulet of Samarkand, or however you say that, and I did not get into it, but this one I really, really liked. It's spooky. It's about kind of a world where you have to have a psychic ability, but everybody is dealing with the problem, which is that ghosts have come back to haunt this world, and only those with psychic ability and those who are very sensitive to it, i.e. the young, can see ghosts and deal with them properly. So it is about a young up-and-coming company of you know, supernatural investigators called Lockwood and Co. And the main character is Lucy, and they are investigating a haunting in a house. Things go wrong and just spiral out of control from there. It was very spooky. It was really good if you like kind of spooky, scary things, that I would do that one. I have a, I don't know if I've mentioned it before, I have a Sherlock Holmes book club that I do at work as well. So I read a different Sherlock Holmes story every month. We're going through the canon kind of chronologically. So this month we read A Case of Identity, which is a really good, kind of heartbreaking, like really upsetting to me story. The kids in my book club were not as upset or grossed out by it as I am. And that might be because they're just still kids. But if you haven't read that one, it's a little twisted. It's a little twisted for a very short story in which Sherlock Holmes never leaves 221B Baker Street. He solves everything from his armchair with a couple letters, which is just the height of his powers to me. And then I don't know if I mentioned it on here. I'm on a new graphic novel committee. This is for a new award list called Excellence in Graphic Literature that is being started up by Denver Comic-Con and Pop Culture Bookshelf, Pop Culture Classroom. I am the co-chair for the adult list, and so I've been getting a lot of really great graphic novels the kind of the deadline to send them out is tomorrow, the 31st of January. So they've just been coming in droves, and I've got a lot of books. So I read a bunch this weekend. I read Weavers, which is Simon Spurrier and Dylan Burnett and Triona Farrell, which is kind of like a mob story with a murder mystery and a coup and these creepy spider things that climb into people and give them special powers. It was really interesting. There were lots of twists and turns and conspiracies, and you don't know who to trust and things like that. And it's pretty violent. So if you're into that, that's it. And it's got some really, really fun art. I also read kind of back to back, and they seemed sort of thematic, though they are set in different worlds. This is Casa Nostra, which is by Chris Sarracini and Nick Kilislian. And this is another mob story, but this is set more in like a historical fiction, realistic world. The main character is a young woman who her dad was a bank robber and mobster, and we don't know his name, but she grows up to run a safe house. So when mobsters and bank robbers and bad guys in general are on the run and they're trying to hide from the police, they come out to her house in the wilderness in Indiana, and they can lay low there for a while. And it's really cool. The house that she runs is with a bunch of other women, which is really neat. But something goes wrong, and she needs to exact revenge, and it's about how she goes about doing that. So this is also pretty graphic, graphic novel, but definitely for adult audiences. Definitely, but it's pretty good. I read another one called Josephine, which is a wordless graphic novel, and it's kind of semi-autobiographical about a young boy growing up in the city. I'm guessing New York, but as far as I know, there was nothing really setting it exactly in New York, but it was, again, an urban setting in the early 60s, and it's about his kind of day-to-day life where with his live-in housekeeper, kind of nanny, her name's Josephine, and his the happy times he spends with her and the tensions that are going on with his parents and things like that, and with some civil rights kind of stuff in there as well. It was okay. It was a little rough, style-wise, but it was an interesting read. This one, however, was truly gorgeous. This is Monet by Salve, Rubio, and Effa, E-F-A. And it is it's a biography of Claude Monet's life told through his words. And the artwork is beautiful because it really mimics the Impressionist style, and it goes through kind of the history of the Impressionist and Monet's part in that. He was really, for a long time, considered the leader of the Impressionists. And in the author's notes, they say that they couldn't believe that there weren't more biographies about Monet, because he was definitely revolutionary. And what's beautiful about this is that they go through and they show a bunch of the paintings that he's most famous for. And in really interesting ways, there's one where he's painting this large painting, and you see the large painting and you see Monet inside it doing the painting, which is really neat because he had his friend Basile stand in as the model for several of the men in that painting, and so it's him having a conversation with Basile in different positions when he's modeling for different figures in the thing. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. And I really loved the authors at the end had kind of a guide, and they walk you through what they were thinking when they put in different paintings, and they kind of compare how they portrayed the paintings and how they look in real life and what their choices were, and even how they composed some of the drawings in the book. why they decided to show them from certain perspectives and, you know, arrange things in certain ways. So it's really fascinating. It's a beautiful book. So yeah, that's called Monet, Itinerant of Light. And I think that's all for this that I read this month. So that's not bad. I will be reading a lot more next month, mostly graphic novels, and I will hopefully be able to come back and talk to you about those. Make sure you do all those nice things you can do on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Comment below if you've read any of the books that I talked about today, or if you have any suggestions based on the ones that I read. Subscribe if you haven't already. If you have, thank you for subscribing in the past, and thank you for coming back to watch more videos. And oh yeah, share this wherever you like to share YouTube videos. So I hope you have a good rest of the day, evening, morning, afternoon, whatever. And I hope that you have a good night and that you have a good book to read. Bye. Hey, stop. No. So I finally got around, and there were lots of twists and turns and false